Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the Midwestern Conservative. We're going to be talking about on this podcast many different types of, whatever's going on in politics, the differences between the far left and the far right. And to let you know, it's going to be more informative than it's going to be people saying, you have to do this. Okay? And the biggest issue I have with politics nowadays would have to be the whole socialism or democratic socialist. Now, a democratic socialist doesn't really live up to what they talk about. Now, you've got democratic, which means they're elected, but they're socialists. Now, most socialists aren't elected because you got the United Soviet Socialist Republic, or the old Russia, USSR. You got Xi over there in China. He wasn't elected by the people. And then you have Venezuela. Well, now how can you be a democratic socialist? Well, socialism in the democratic form would most likely stem back to the days of Nazism. Now, here's where people are going to get upset and say, what do you mean Nazis? Well, the National Socialist Group was the Nazis. They were the National Association of Socialists. So, in Europe, they're called the far right, and in America, they're called the far left. Well, then you get to the point of what's the difference between a liberal and a socialist, or the far left, or a left-winger. Well, a liberal generally believes in people. They are geared more towards freedoms and liberties, hence liberal. Well, that sounds more like the conservative nowadays, or the center. Well, that's because the word has been morphing, and, it's an amorphous situation in politics. John F. Kennedy in the 1960s was pro-gun, America first. Well, today, that's nowadays a modern Republican. Not all Republicans are the same way. Not all liberals are the same way. Then you have the Democratic Socialists, which have a national representation of about 66,000 members. That's all they have. That's registered members, I should say, not actual members. Now, they didn't have but maybe 15,000, 20,000 members at the most back when Bernie Sanders first came on the scene when he was running for president. Well, Bernie Sanders he calls himself a democratic socialist. No, I don't see him that way. Bernie Sanders is an actual socialist. You don't honeymoon in the USSR singing the Russian, or Soviet, I should say, anthem, drinking with a bunch of socialists. That's not democratic at all. The guy didn't really have a steady job until he became mayor of a small town in Vermont. What was it, Burlington? And he won by a few votes. And then he did nothing in Congress throughout his whole thing. You could look it up online and find all that out. And then you have people going, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, he wants to give everybody money. He wants to give this, give that, give that. The British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, when she used to say, socialism's great until you run out of other people's money. And when that's true, you can be the best person in the world, handing out all this money because why not? It's free money. Quote the word free. Free health care, free this, free that. Let me remind people that nothing is free. That comes from our tax dollars, our tax base. So if you have a 50-50 split on people paying taxes and people not paying taxes, and I'm not talking Social Security and all that other stuff that we pay in all the time, because that's our money already. That's just the government, quote, holding it for us, which I liked Bush's plan of putting it in an account and it creating our own interest in us doing our own investments, but Congress isn't like that. The best thing to do when you deal with somebody like that would be, well, ask them why. Is it because they don't want to work? And you'll hear people saying, well, mostly it's college educated, people that are, they already have a good life, they've paid off their college debts and all that. That's not true. Because I'm college educated. I have college debt. I'm not a socialist. I don't want somebody else to pay for my college. By paying for my own stuff, well, that right there reviles the people that don't want you to know that you can't get money for nothing. Because it'll lead to a dictatorship. All of a sudden elections are going to stop. That's not America. America is not a democracy, mind you. Everybody's going to argue on that one. No, we're a constitutional republic. And what that means is we elect people to go to Congress and enact laws or vote for us. Because in a true democracy, we would be voting ourselves. Like, let's say a tax hike. Well, you'd have to have everybody vote in the country. And that ain't going to happen. You know that as well as I do. So people are going to sit there and go, well, I honestly think this and I honestly think that. Well, which leads me to what a lot of beliefs are of the younger generation. These kids were not brought up with the Tiananmen Square, the person staring down a tank, or watching Russia, or the Soviet Union, I should say, I'm sorry. The Soviet Union, with bread lines. What person wants to have a bread line? I mean, if you want one, be my guest. There's people eating in dumpsters over in down in Venezuela. China, they're eating bats and whatever not. If that's what you want, be my guest. But here in America, we have our constitutional republic, which we elect a president and we elect Congress members, senators, and all that. Now, the socialists, though, they're a different bunch, because this group wants us to hand out money and, well, have the people own the businesses. Well, if the people own the businesses, that's not capitalism, that's socialism. It's all collective, and in the collective movement, that sounds good at first, but the drawback to collectivism is this. If everybody's getting the same amount, who's going to want to work? You've got 50 people out there just sitting on their butt in a chair, whatever. And you've got 20 people killing themselves, digging a ditch, building a house, whatever. Well, those 50 people sitting on their butts are going to get the same amount as the 20 people doing whatever job you have. And I know it's offensive. It's everybody's sitting there saying, well, you've got the wrong point of view. No, because a lot of these policies that are being preached by the far left nowadays were preached by Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, China, North Korea. Man, look at the mess North Korea's in. And they're a dictatorship. Well, technically, all of those countries are dictatorships. They cannot be socialist and not be a dictatorship. The dictatorships in the Soviet style, Nazi style, Venezuela style and all that, the rich get richer and they keep the oppression down. Well, people are saying, well, free healthcare, free this. It's not free. We all work for it. That's fine and dandy. Make everybody pay their fair share. Oh, wait, that's capitalism. If people pay their fair share and pay for goods and services, that's capitalism. That's like somebody at a college protesting Ben Shapiro, because he's a hater and all this. I'm sorry, Ben Shapiro has a lot of great ideas. I have a lot of respect for the guy. I mean, shoot, he's got his Juris Doctorate. He's a lawyer. He's got his own website. He's one of the youngest published authors, published columns nationwide. Guys like that, they know what they're talking about. Religion holds a big part in American society. It doesn't matter if you're Jew, Christian, whatever. You have that right in this country. Right now you do, anyway. If they're to change this, for everybody to say, hey, you can't do this anymore. That's like the pandemic, but we won't go into that at the moment. People want to be taken care of. They don't want these freedoms. And Dennis Prager will even tell you that. Adam Carolla, big time comedian, funny guy in my opinion. Not exactly religious, he's not religious, but he stands for one thing: freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Yeah, you got the First Amendment right there. That's a lot of freedoms, and there's more to it. But kids these days aren't taught that. Kids these days aren't taught the atrocities that you see when you come across Venezuela or Russia or Yugoslavia. There you go. There's another one, Milosevic, back in the 90s. But these kids don't realize that, and a lot of them only remember the crash of 2008, where the banks failed and they had a lot of failures. Well, yeah, that does happen in capitalism sometimes. If your entire economy is about to collapse, yeah, you got to bail out of business. You take stock in the business, and they pay you back. Hence Chrysler, General Motors. Ford almost did. I think they had to hawk their logo. But in that point of view, these people that are out there preaching, give me, give me, give me, give me, what are you giving in return? Are you going to prosper off of what I do and just let your own self get whatever you want? That's not how America works, people. Now, how America works is a lot better. I like this system. I'm a very big capitalist. I own stock. I have a 401k. I work. Well, how does that make me different than anybody else? Well, it makes me a lot different. Because as a conservative, I want to conserve money. I don't want these big stimulus checks. I don't want government in my life. I want freedom. Freedom was an experiment in America. And that was a big deal because in that time period, freedom, well, that's why we had the Articles of Confederation before we had the Constitution. Yeah, we had something crappy before the Constitution. Yeah, it just happens. Where it made the state strong and the federal government weak, no power to tax, no power to do anything. And that made the people go, okay, but that couldn't defend us. That couldn't defend our nation. So we had to come up with a better idea. Well, the Constitution. So, there we go. Well, what makes that different? Well, the United States is a big experiment. You've got your experimenting every day in America. Americans don't just go out and, this has been done for centuries. No, it hasn't been done for centuries. What it's been done is a couple hundred years. The French Revolution versus the American Revolution. Yeah, look it up in your history. Big difference. And I don't mean these new books. These new books cut things out because people are too afraid of being offended. Which means this video will probably be taken down because it's going to offend somebody because I said the right thing. I said what needed to be said. It doesn't matter. That's what freedom of speech has. Freedom of speech gives you freedom, gives everybody the freedom of their own thoughts. You can't say this and all that. Well, they have freedom everywhere. No, they don't. They don't have freedom of speech everywhere. I believe it was in Germany. It might have been in the UK. I could be wrong. A comedian taught their dog to do the Nazi salute. They got in trouble. Brigitte Bardot in France, because she spoke her mind. In the Middle East, you speak out against the government, you're dead. So everybody thinks, oh, well, this is America. It ain't going to happen here. Well, it could happen here. The problem is, as Americans, we all need to know that we are all in this together. It's not left versus right. It's not right, conservative versus liberal. It is, we are all in this together. Fundamentally changing the country is not a good idea. Because you fundamentally change everything, you can never get back to what you had before. And in the Bill of Rights, our first 10 amendments, gives us a lot of rights. A very, very large amount of rights that other countries don't have. And, some of them will say they're archaic. You don't need a gun. Well, that's what the British said to the American colonies. What happened? I mean, people need to realize, from George Washington all the way down to our current president, Donald Trump, they are all trying to shape America in their views. Now, I'm not saying who the worst president in my opinion is. Come on. It was Barack Obama. We all know that. Before that, Bill Clinton. And we're not bashing the mainstream media. We're not bashing the conservative sites. We're not bashing the liberal sites. I'm just going to tell you how it is, because growing up on a farm, growing up out in the country, growing up in small towns, nah. We all do what we have to do. We all work to survive. We don't just ask for handouts. Now, I notice a lot of my old classmates are quote-unquote Bernie bros because, oh, free this, free that. It ain't free, people. If it were free, everybody'd be getting it. It'd be like, oh, okay, cool, no problem. Well, guess what? It ain't free. Hopefully, people start to realize that. If they don't, I don't know. But this is the first episode. Hopefully you like it. I'm going to put another one up tomorrow. A little better lighting, a little better preparation. I just decided I'd introduce myself and some of my points of view. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.